Kṛṣṇa. We welcome all of our YouTube live listeners and our Facebook live listeners. Welcome to all of you to this session of Sri Bhagavatamrita. Welcome. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatvajaya Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Pankajanabhaya Nama Pankajamaline Nama Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangre Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupasana Vrajavadhu Varigena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramana Mamalam Prema Mupamartho Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Matamidam Tatra Dharana Paraha Om Agyanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Radhanatha Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swami Niti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradayine Gaurakatha Dhamadaya Nagara Grama Tarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangur langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum Vinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hare Krishna. Again, we would like to welcome all of our Facebook Live listeners and our YouTube Live listeners. Welcome to all of you to this session 79 of Sri Bhagavatamrita. So before we proceed with today's session, we would like to congratulate the participants of the quiz session from yesterday. From Facebook, we would like to congratulate Meena Mataji and Ranjani Gopika Mataji. Congratulations, Matajis, and we thank you very much for your participation. From YouTube, we'd like to congratulate Janeshwar Gauranga Prabhu, Barshana Chitra Mataji, Geeta Varadarajan Mataji, Vrindavani Mataji, and Rekha Mataji. Congratulations to all of you, and we thank you. Thank you so much for participating in the online quiz sessions and giving us your online association in this way. So today we are going to try to cover 4 chapters, chapters 74, 75, 76, and 77. So these 4 chapters, chapter 74 is entitled The Deliverance of Śiśupāla at the Rājasūya Sacrifice. So we heard yesterday, Prabhu was mentioning very beautifully how Kṛṣṇa took Bhima and Arjuna and Bhima killed Jarasandha by the directions of Kṛṣṇa. And then from Magadha, now they're returning back to Indraprastha. So this chapter describes how Lord Krishna received the honor of the first worship during the Rājasūya sacrifice and how he killed Śiśupāla. So after Lord Krishna was glorified, during this Rājasūya sacrifice, King Yudhishthir, he selected qualified brahmanas such as Bharadvaj, Gautama Rishi, Vasishtha Rishi to serve as the priests for the Rājasūya sacrifice. Then many exalted guests of all the 4 social orders arrived to see the sacrificial performance. There were so many, people from not just around the neighboring states, but also from far distant. They were all coming to witness this grand Rājasūya sacrifice. So text 18 says, the members of the assembly, then pondered who among them should be worshipped first. Because, in this assembly, there were great sages, like Bharadvaj, Gautama Rishi. All these great personalities are present. So who should be worshipped first? But since there were many personalities qualified for this honor, they were unable to decide, So then finally, Sahadeva, the youngest, Pandava, he spoke up. He said, text 19, Sahadev said, certainly it is Achyuta, the supreme personality of Godhead and the chief of the Yadavas, who deserves this highest position. In truth, he himself comprises all the demigods worshipped in sacrifice, along with such aspects of the worship as the sacred place, the time, and the paraphernalia. Sahadev goes on to explain that Kṛṣṇa is the one who creates the many activities of this world, and thus by his grace alone, the entire world endeavors for the ideals of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation like dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So therefore, Sahadeva concludes, after giving substantial reasoning, Sahadeva concludes in text 23, he says that therefore we should give this highest honor to Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Lord. And if we do so, we will be honoring all living beings and also our own selves. So here Sahadev gives a very important point that he is saying that Kṛṣṇa is at the root of the universe. And if you worship the root, then everyone will be satisfied. This is the same analogy that Srila Prabhupada gave. That if we worship Kṛṣṇa, there is not, nobody else we need to worship. There is no need to worship. Just like when we water the root of the plant, every other, the branch of the tree, the leaves, the fruits, the flowers, everything gets nurtured. So similarly, when we worship Kṛṣṇa, there is no one else ready, left rather to be worshipped. And when we worship Kṛṣṇa, it encompasses and completes the worship of every personality. Sahadev continues to say, anyone who wishes the honor he gives to be reciprocated infinitely should honor Kṛṣṇa, the perfectly peaceful and perfectly complete soul of all beings, the Supreme Lord who views nothing as separate from himself. And he concludes by saying that, Sahadeva, Shukadev Goswami concludes by saying that having said this, Sahadeva, who understands Lord Krishna's power, fell silent. And having heard his words, all the saintly persons present congratulated him, exclaiming in, unison. Everyone started saying, excellent, excellent. Yes, this is what should be done. So text 26, the king, was delighted. The king means Yudhishthir Maharaj, was delighted to hear this pronouncement of the Brahmanas because, Yudhishthir Maharaj didn't want that any of his esteemed guests should feel bad in any way. So when he saw that whatever Sahadev said was in, everyone agreed to that. So then, Yudhishthira Maharaj was very happy and very delighted, from which he understood the mood of the entire assembly. And overwhelmed with love, he fully worshipped Lord Kṛṣṇa, who is the master of the senses, Rishikesha. So text 27 and 28, it explains how Yudhishthira Maharaj worshipped Kṛṣṇa. It says, after bathing Lord Krishna's lotus feet, Maharaj Yudhishthir joyfully sprinkled the water upon his own head and then upon the heads of his wife, brothers, and other family members and ministers. That water purifies the entire world. As he honored the Lord with presentations of yellow silken garments and precious jeweled ornaments, the king's tear-filled eyes prevented him from directly looking at the Lord. When tears swell up in our eyes get, a little, what our vision gets obstacled. We can't see clearly. So that's what happened to Yudhishthira Maharaj. He was so overwhelmed with love for Kṛṣṇa that, his eyes, welled up in tears, and he could not, look at the smiling lotus face of the Lord. It prevented him. So text 29 says that when they saw Lord Kṛṣṇa thus honored, nearly all who were present joined their palms reverentially exclaiming, obeisances unto you, all victories to you, O Supreme Lord. And everyone bowed down to him. Flowers rained down from above. In this text 29, the word used is nearly everyone present. Because there was this one personality who did not like it, that Kṛṣṇa was getting the worship. So that is that personality. That's why it is said that not everyone shouted. So text 30 says, the intolerant son of Damaghosha became infuriated upon hearing the glorification of Lord Kṛṣṇa's transcendental qualities. He stood up from his seat and angrily waving his arms, fearlessly spoke to the entire assembly the following harsh words against the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada is writing in this context. He says that in that meeting of the Rājasūya sacrifice, Śiśupāla was present from the beginning. He was like one of the most rivaled enemy of Kṛṣṇa. And there were many reasons for this, especially because, Kṛṣṇa stole Rukmini Devi from the marriage ceremony, because Rukmini Devi was promised, her hand in marriage to Śiśupāla by Rukmi, her brother. And, it was like Kṛṣṇa stole Rukmini Devi, from Śiśupāla's own hands. So he was very insulted and he hated Kṛṣṇa. So therefore he could not tolerate, Srila Prabhupada writes, that he could not tolerate such honor to Kṛṣṇa and glorification of his qualities. Instead of being happy to hear the glories of the Lord, he became very angry. This is the result of envious people, Srila Prabhupada writes. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions in this regard that the reason Śiśupāla, he did not object when Sahadev proposed Kṛṣṇa for the Agra Puja, for the first worship, which is called as Agra Puja. At that time, Śiśupāla was present. He was there, but he did not object when Sahadev said that, Kṛṣṇa should be the one who should receive the Agra Puja. And, Śiśupāla did not object at that time. So why is he objecting now? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the reason for that. He says that Śiśupāla wanted to ruin King Yudhishthira Maharaj's sacrifice. If Śiśupāla had argued earlier, in the beginning itself, if he would have said and gone against Sahadev and said, that why should Kṛṣṇa receive the first worship? Then another person would be selected. If he would have objected, then the assembly would then therefore definitely select, somebody else for the Agra Puja, and then the sacrifice would have proceeded normally. So therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that therefore Śiśupāla allowed Kṛṣṇa to be selected, waited until the worship was over, and then he spoke up. hoping in this way that he would demonstrate the sacrifice was now spoiled. Thus, he would ruin the endeavor of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and at the same time, he would insult Kṛṣṇa and show his envious statement in this way. So this is the interpretation of our acharyas, that they make us understand that why things are not spoken at the right time. Because there is a right time for everything to happen. And this was the cunningness of Śiśupāla, that he was, so cunning that he was planning this entire thing in his mind. He was not only showing his envious character towards Kṛṣṇa, but because Kṛṣṇa favoring the Pandavas. Kṛṣṇa here is favoring the Pandavas. And because of Kṛṣṇa's mercy, Yudhishthira Maharaj is able to perform the Rājasūya sacrifice. Even that was intolerable for Śiśupāla. And therefore, not only did he want to insult Kṛṣṇa, he also had the intention of spoiling the Rājasūya sacrifice of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He did not have personal enmity towards Yudhishthira Maharaj. But because he had enmity towards Kṛṣṇa, and anyone who has good relationship with Kṛṣṇa, Śiśupāla automatically had an inimical attitude towards them. This is the way that envy poisons our mind. So Śiśupāla, acted like this. So text 31, Śiśupāla said, the statement of the Vedas that time is the unavoidable controller of all has indeed been proven true, since the intelligence of wise elders has now become diverted by the words of a mere boy. And who is that mere boy? Because Sahadev, he was the youngest of the Pandavas. So that's why Śiśupāla is saying that this child, this mere boy, he said, and everyone agreed that Kṛṣṇa should be worshipped. And he continues to say, text 32, he continues to say that all leaders of this grand assembly, you know best who is fit candidate for being honored. Therefore, you should not heed the words of a child when he claims that Kṛṣṇa deserves to be worshipped. You see, all of these statements Śiśupāla could have said when Sahadev actually proposed it. But we see the intention, we see the ill motivation of Śiśupāla, that he wanted to ruin everything. And that's why he is bringing it up now. So Śiśupāla is continuing, how does one follow, how does one who follow no principles of the social and spiritual orders or family ethics, who has been excluded from all religious duties, who behaves whimsically and who has no good qualities, how does such a person deserve to be worshipped? So these were all crazy insults, given by Śiśupāla towards Kṛṣṇa. And Srila Prabhupada comments in this regard in his Kṛṣṇa book. Srila Prabhupada comments saying that actually Kṛṣṇa does not belong to any particular caste, nor does he have to perform any occupational duty. And it is stated in the Vedas that the Supreme Lord has nothing to do as his prescribed duty. Kṛṣṇa claims this even in the Bhagavad Gita, that there is no activity that can bind me, that there is no act that has been prescribed for me. So Prabhupada continues to say, whatever has to be done on his behalf is executed by his different energies. So Śiśupāla indirectly actually is praising Kṛṣṇa, saying that he is not within the jurisdiction, like Kṛṣṇa is not bound by the jurisdiction of the Vedic injunctions. So this is true because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What Śiśupāla is saying here, Prabhupada is saying that that's completely true. That he has no qualities, means when Śiśupāla is saying that Kṛṣṇa has no qualities, Śiśupāla said that in this verse. Prabhupada is interpreting that. He's saying that it means that Kṛṣṇa has no material qualities. And because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can act independently, not caring for conventions or social or religious principles. So in this way, the acharyas help us to understand that the direct criticism of Śiśupāla can be understood by us as an indirect glorification of the Supreme Lord. So text 38 says, Shukadev Goswami continues, that bereft of all good fortune, Śiśupāla spoke these and other insulting words to Kṛṣṇa, but the Supreme Lord said nothing. just as a lion ignores a jackal's cry. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains that why did Krishna not say anything? Why? When Śiśupāla was saying all these insults, even Balaram was getting so agitated. Balaram, in fact, at one point got up with his gada, Sunanda, and he said, I'm going to smash Śiśupāla's head for speaking so offensive language. And Krishna said, no, thou sit down. Why? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that, it states that Śiśupāla was actually born, he's one of the distant cousins of Krishna. And when he was born with 3 eyes and 4 arms, like a very, appeared to be like a demon kind of thing. So his parents got very worried, seeing this kind of a, child. So his parents were inclined to cast him out, but they were warned by Akashvani at that time. And the Akashvani said that don't do this, don't abandon your child, because, there is something very specific that this child is destined for. And it was also foretold by the same, voice, saying that these extra body parts would disappear when a certain person took the child on his lap, and the person who takes him on his lap and the extra body parts disappear, that person would be the person eventually in whose hands your son will be killed. So, Krishna in his youth one time visited the house of this cousin, his aunt's house. And as soon as Krishna carried the baby Śiśupāla on his lap, the extra eye and the extra arms immediately disappeared, and indicating that Śiśupāla's death was destined by the hands of Krishna. So Śiśupāla's mother, who is Krishna's aunt, she begged Krishna that, please, my dear Krishna, please, he's your cousin. You cannot be the killer of your own cousin. And Krishna then promised, his aunt, saying that I will forgive Śiśupāla 100 times. All his sins, I will forgive them 100 times. So this was the reason that Krishna tolerated. He ignored, this word that is said here, that the Supreme Lord said nothing, just as a lion ignores the jackal's cry. So just, ignoring that, Krishna did not say anything here because he remembered his promise to his aunt. So text 39, upon hearing such intolerable blasphemy of the Lord, several members of the assembly covered their ears and walked out, angrily cursing the king of Chedi. Chedi Raj, Chedi was the kingdom of Śiśupāla. So they could not tolerate, the way Śiśupāla was cursing and insulting Krishna. Text 40 says, anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Supreme Lord or his faithful devotees will certainly fall down, bereft of his pious credits. So text 40 of chapter 74. We are doing 74 right now. So 10th canto, chapter 74, text 40. Very, very important verse. It says that anyone who fails to immediately leave the place where he hears criticism of the Supreme Lord or his faithful devotees, they will certainly fall down. They'll become bereft of all pious credits in their life. So this one, Srila Prabhupada says, this is Vaishnava Aparad, Aparad to the Supreme Lord, Guru Aparad. When we listen to criticism about another devotee, it's like we take part in that Aparad. Aparadha means, Radha is there in this word. Apa means it takes us away. It takes us away from the mercy of Srimati Radharani. That is called aparadha. So we must be very careful of, listening to blasphemy or criticism about another devotee, what to speak of Guru and Krishna. So then text 41, the Pandavas, they would, there are 3 ways in which we can, counteract the way that we respond to criticism. One is that we leave the place. Second is that we cut the tongue of the person who speaks like this. And the third is that we commit suicide if we are not able to do the other two things. So these are the three options that are given when we are, listening to any Vaishnava Parad. So then what did the Pandavas do? Text 41 says, then the sons of Pandu became furious, and together with the warriors of Matsya, Kaikai, and Srinjaya clans, they rose up from their seats with weapons poised, ready to kill Śiśupāla. They wanted to just kill Śiśupāla. And Śiśupāla, in turn, he just saw as if, this huge wave of warriors were coming towards him, charging at Śiśupāla with weapons. He also took up his sword and shield, and he also, started going there. And he was, at the same time, he was going and, he was going on, insulting Kṛṣṇa. So text 43 says that at that point, the Supreme Lord stood up and he checked his devotees. He said, please come back. I'll take care of it. Because Balaram at this point, he was really mad. Lord Balaram said, Kṛṣṇa, what are you doing? What are you doing about this? And Kṛṣṇa said, I'm counting, thou. I'm counting. He said, 98, 99, 100. So text 43 says, Kṛṣṇa then angrily sent forth his razor-sharp disc and severed the head of Śiśupāla as he was attacking. So then, this Śiśupāla was killed. So and in front of everyone's eyes, text 45 says that an effulgent light rose from Śiśupāla's body, and as everyone watched, it entered Lord Kṛṣṇa, just like a meteor falling from the sky and into the earth. So Śiśupāla merged. His soul came and entered the body of Kṛṣṇa. So text 46, Shukadeva Goswami saying that obsessed with hatred for Kṛṣṇa throughout 3 lifetimes, Śiśupāla attained the Lord's transcendental nature. Indeed, one's consciousness determines one's future birth. So Śiśupāla, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Śiśupāla and his friend Dantavakra, we will see in chapter 78 that Dantavakra is getting killed. So the Śiśupāla and Dantavakra, they were previously Jaya and Vijay, the 2 gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. And because of their offense to the 4 Kumaras, they were cursed to take 3 births in the material world as demons. So the first birth was as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. The second was Ravana and Kumbhakarna. And the third is Śiśupāla and Dantavakra. So in each birth, they were completely absorbed in enmity toward the Lord and were slain by the Supreme Lord himself. And Srila Prabhupada explains the position of Śiśupāla in his Kṛṣṇa book. Srila Prabhupada says that although Śiśupāla acted as an enemy of Kṛṣṇa, he was not for a single moment out of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Just like Kamsa, he was thinking of Kṛṣṇa negatively. So was Śiśupāla. He was always Kṛṣṇa conscious, but thinking of the Lord in an unfavorable way, thinking of him in a negative way. So he was always absorbed in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, Srila Prabhupada writes, and thus he got the salvation of Sayujya Mukti, merging into the existence of the Supreme, and finally he became reinstated in his original position of personal service as the guard or the doorkeeper of the Vaikuntha planets. So Srila Prabhupada writes this, that he became instated in his original position. So text 47 says, Emperor Yudhishthir thus gave generous gifts to the sacrificial priests and the members of the assembly, properly honoring them all in the manner prescribed by the Vedas. He then took the Avabhrita bath. Avabhrita bath means after completing a yajna, there is bath that needs to be taken by the yajman of the sacrifice. So they take bath in the auspicious rivers like the Ganges or the Jamuna, and that completes the ritual of the sacrifice. So text 48 says, thus Sri Kṛṣṇa, the Lord of all masters of mystic yoga, saw to the successful execution of this great Rājasūya sacrifice on behalf of King Yudhishthir. And afterwards, the Lord stayed with his intimate friends for a few months at their earnest request. Then text 53 says that, everyone, Shukadeva Goswami is saying, all were satisfied except for the sinful Duryodhana. the personification of the age of quarrel and the disease of the Kuru dynasty. Here, Shukadev Goswami is calling Duryodhana to be the personification of the age of quarrel. The age of quarrel is Kali Yuga. So Duryodhana is the personification of Kali Yuga. And he's the disease of the Kuru dynasty. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that why is he called the disease? Because when a particular limb of our body becomes diseased or paralyzed, then that limb becomes useless to the body. So because Duryodhana, he was so inflicted by his envy towards the Pandavas, he had become diseased. And because of Duryodhana, the entire Kuru dynasty had to get wiped out. That's why he's called as the disease of the Kuru dynasty. So Shukadev Goswami continues to say that he could not bear to see the flourishing opulence of the sons of Pandu. Text 54 says, the concluding verse of this chapter says, one who recites these activities, this is the falastuti of listening to the pastime of, the deliverance of Śiśupāla. It says that one who recites these activities of Lord Vishnu, including the killing of Śiśupāla, the deliverance of the kings, and the performance of the Rājasūya sacrifice, is freed from all sins. Jai Shri Krishna, Purushottam Krishna Bhagavan ki Jai. So this brings us to chapter 75, which is entitled Duryodhana Humiliated. So this chapter describes the glorious conclusion of the Rājasūya sacrifice and how Prince Duryodhana was humiliated in Yudhishthira Maharaja's palace. So at the time of Yudhishthira Maharaja's, Rājasūya sacrifice, many of his relatives and well-wishers, they endeavored to please him by performing necessary services. Like everyone was helping in some way or the other. Taking care of guests and this and that. So, but Yudhishthira Maharaj never told that you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But rather because they all felt to be part of the same family, they out of their own, love for the Pandavas, they did all these services, considering themselves to also be like part of the host to welcome all the other guests and do different services. So when the sacrifice was complete, the king adorned the priests, the exalted members of the assembly, and his own relatives with fragrant sandalwood paste, flower garlands, and fine clothing. Then they all went to the banks of the river Ganges to perform the ritual bathing, and that marks the end of the Rājasūya sacrifice. And before the final bathing, there was much sporting in the river among the, the men and the women. They were like, sprinkling water at each other. It was just a very nice, festive kind of a mood. And sprinkled with aromatic water and other liquids, Draupadi and the other ladies appeared most beautiful, and their faces were shining with bashful laughter. Everyone was really, really happy. So it is said that after the priests had executed the final rituals, the king and his queen, Srimati Draupadi, they bathed in the Ganges. Then all those present who belonged to the orders of the Varnashram Dharma, they also bathed. Yudhishthira Maharaj put on new clothes and he worshipped the Brahmanas, their family, their friends, and their well-wishers, each one in the particular manner suitable for them, and offered them different kinds of gifts. So the guests then departed to their own homes, but Yudhishthira Maharaj was so anxious about his imminent separation from those who were extremely dear to him. He compelled, several of his relatives and closest friends, including Kṛṣṇa, to remain in Indraprastha for a little more longer. So Yudhishthira Maharaj didn't want them to go away immediately. So it is explained that King Yudhishthira's royal palace had been constructed by Mayadanava, who had endowed it with many wonderful features and opulences. And King Duryodhana was burning with envy when he saw these riches and these opulences. And Srila Prabhupada writes in his Kṛṣṇa book, saying that after looking at such beauties in the palace of King Yudhishthira, Duryodhana became extremely envious. He became especially envious and lustful upon seeing the beauty of Draupadi, because he had cherished a special attraction for her from the very beginning of her marriage with the Pandavas. You see, when Prabhupada writes that in the marriage selection that Draupadi, the Swayamvar of Draupadi, Duryodhana had also been present. And with other princes, he had also been very much captivated by the beauty of Draupadi, but he failed to achieve her. So this was also a cause of, envy, that why do Pandavas have to have everything in their life? Why do they get everything in their life? This was the cause of envy for Duryodhana. So one day it is explained that as Yudhishthir Maharaj was sitting with Sri Kṛṣṇa in his royal assembly hall, he was, all his subordinates, his family members, they were all manifesting magnificence equal to that of Lord Indra. I mean, this is the opulence of Indraprastha. And at that time, Duryodhana entered the hall in a fitful mood. Srila Shukadev Goswami. Fitful means very irritated, very angered kind of mood. And bewildered by the mystic craft of Mayadanava, Duryodhana mistook parts of the solid floor water and thus lifted his garment while, because he thought the way Mayadanav had created this Maya Mahal was that, it looked as if it was solid floor, but it was looking as if it was water is running, but it actually was solid floor. So that's why he lifted his garment, but in one place where it was actually like water, it appeared like solid floor. So in that place, while in one place he fell into that water, mistaking it to be like a solid floor. And when Bhimasena, the ladies of the court and the royal princes present, saw this, they began to laugh at Duryodhana. And although Maharaj Yudhishthir tried to stop them, Sri Kṛṣṇa actually encouraged their laughter. So thoroughly embarrassed, Duryodhana left the assembly hall in a fury and immediately departed for Hastinapur. And Srila Prabhupada writes in this connection, Srila Prabhupada says that when Duryodhana left in such an angry mood, everyone regretted this decision. Everyone, including Yudhishthir Maharaj, Pandavas, everyone regretted. And King Yudhishthir Maharaj also became very sorry that, Duryodhana left in such a way. But despite of all of this, Kṛṣṇa was very silent. Kṛṣṇa did not feel, what the other people were feeling. He did not say anything against or in favor of the incident. Kṛṣṇa did not say anything. But it appeared that Duryodhana had been put into illusion by the supreme will of Lord Kṛṣṇa, Prabhupada writes. It appears as if Duryodhana was put into the illusion by the supreme will of Kṛṣṇa, and this was the beginning of the enmity between the, Kurus and the Pandavas, which manifested in the battle of Kurukshetra, Prabhupada says. So this appeared to be a part of Kṛṣṇa's plan in his mission to decrease the burden of the world. So this was all a part of Kṛṣṇa's plan, that Duryodhana getting humiliated. Now then, after this, we'll see in chapter 76 that Kṛṣṇa leaves from Indraprastha. He comes back to Dwarka. What happens in Dwarka, we'll see now. But then there is, not much after this, apart from a few chapters, a couple of chapters where, Queen Draupadi actually comes to meet with the wives of Kṛṣṇa. But then what happens after that? Because Duryodhana got so insulted, so agitated, he actually left from Indraprastha feeling so humiliated. And then with Shakuni, he conspired to invite the Pandavas to Hastinapur and invite them for a match of dice, a game of dice. And in the first game of dice, Draupadi was insulted, dragged in the assembly hall, and where she, surrendered to Kṛṣṇa, and Kṛṣṇa came and protected her dignity. Then in the same time, during the same visit, the second match of dice was again proposed by Duryodhana. And then that game, if the loser, whoever is the loser, they would have to go for 12 years into the forest, and the 13th year in incognito. And if they are recognized in that 13th year of incognito, then they would have to again go for 12 years of, again in the forest. That was the, agreement. So all of this is not mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Then at the end of the 13th year, we know what happened in the Mahabharata, that they came back, the Pandavas came back, asked, Kṛṣṇa comes as Shanti Dut, as the messenger of peace, asks for 5 villages. Duryodhana refuses to give that. Then the battle of Kurukshetra happens. So all of this is skipped in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Shukadev Goswami is now almost on the 6th day, when he's in this particular, point in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Shukadev Goswami knew that Parikshit Maharaj has only 1 or 1.5 days till, Takshaka bird comes and destroys and takes the life of Maharaj Parikshit. So that is why Shukadev Goswami just avoided this entire topic. And Shukadev Goswami just wanted, Parikshit Maharaj to hear and not get agitated that how mercilessly, ruthlessly, and cunningly his own father was killed on the battlefield, Abhimanyu, the father of Parikshit Maharaj. So that is the reason why Shukadev Goswami just, we see in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is, Brahmar Geet that we heard, Brahmara Gita, we heard Gopi Gita. Why not the Bhagavad Gita? This is for this reason, that Shukadev Goswami just avoided that entire context so that Parikshit Maharaj is not disturbed in his ultimate prayana, in his ultimate journey. And he should not feel that, grievance that, look how my father was killed on the battlefield. So therefore, not to give anxiety to a dying man, Shukadev Goswami completely avoided this entire topic. So Duryodhana's humiliation ends the Indraprastha chapter, and then now we come to chapter 76, which is entitled The Battle Between Śālva and the Vṛṣṇis. So this chapter relates how the demon Śālva acquired a huge and terrifying airship and how he used it to attack the Vṛṣṇis in Dwarka, and how Lord Pradyumna was taken from the battlefield during the fighting that ensued. So Śālva, who is the Śālva? So Śālva was one of the kings who had been defeated at the time of Rukmini Devi's marriage. So having vowed that, at that time he vowed that he would rid the entire earth of all the Yadavas, he began worshipping Lord Shiva, each day by eating only a palmful of dust. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Śālva was also a very close friend of Śiśupāla. And as soon as he heard that Kṛṣṇa had killed Śiśupāla in Indraprastha, that's why he started performing this kind of tapasya to please Ashutosh, Sri Mahadev. And it is said that after a year had passed, Lord Shiva appeared before Śālva and asked him to choose a benediction. And Śālva begged for a flying machine that could go anywhere and that would strike terror into the hearts of the demigods, the demons, and humans. So Lord Shiva granted this request and had Mayadanava construct for Śālva a flying iron city which was named as Saubha. Saubha. The flying city of Śālva was named as Śaubha. So text 7. Lord Shiva said that, yes, my dear Śālva, so be it. You desire this city. I give you this city. So on Lord Shiva's order, Mayadanava, constructed this flying iron city named Śaubha and presented it to Śālva. So Śālva took this vehicle and he came straight to Dwarka, where he and his huge army, they completely attacked Dwarka. And this time Kṛṣṇa had not yet returned from Indraprastha. And from his airplane, Śālva bombarded Dwarka with tree trunks, boulders, and other missiles. And he produced a mighty whirlwind that obscured everything with dust. So when Pradyumna, the son of Kṛṣṇa, Satyaki, and the other Yadu heroes saw the plight of Dwarka and her residents, they went out to do battle with Śālva's forces. And Pradyumna, the best of the warriors, he destroyed with his divine weapons all of Śālva's illusory magic. And he also bewildered Śālva himself. So Śālva's airplane began wandering aimlessly on the earth, in the sky and tops of mountains, because the airplane was, hit by an arrow that, the airplane did not know what to do, how to react. So therefore that magic was getting curtailed. So, but then a follower of Śālva named Dyuman, he struck Pradyumna with on his chest with his club, and Pradyumna's chariot driver, thinking that his master is really injured, seriously injured, he carried him from the battlefield. He took Pradyumna away from the battlefield. So text 27 says that Pradyumna's driver, who is the son of Daruka, you see, like father, like son. So Daruka is the chariot driver of Kṛṣṇa, and Daruka's son is the chariot driver of Pradyumna. His name is not given though, so he's just mentioned as the son of Daruka, though that he thought that Pradyumna has been shattered by the club, so he removed Pradyumna from the battle. And Pradyumna quickly regained consciousness, and he sharply criticized his driver for doing this. And he said that I'm going to feel insulted. People will think that I have run away from my battlefield. So let's go back into the battlefield. So then the son of Daruka, he says that, my lord, my first duty as your chariot driver is to protect you. So I just brought you away a little bit. I didn't make you run away from the battlefield. So we'll go back. So then this brings us to chapter 77, entitled Lord Kṛṣṇa Slays the Demon Śālva. Here I'd like to point out a difference, that chapter 74, the one we started with, it is entitled The Deliverance of Śiśupāla. And here, this fourth chapter is saying that the slaying of the demon Śālva. So there's a difference, that Kṛṣṇa knew very well who Śiśupāla is. And he, of course, knows also. So, Śālva, he is saying here that, Kṛṣṇa killed Śālva, but that chapter is saying that Kṛṣṇa delivered Śiśupāla. Delivered in the sense that he reinstated Śiśupāla in his original position as the gatekeeper of Vaikuntha. So that's why these chapters are, even the naming of these chapters are done so carefully by, Srila Prabhupada. So this chapter 77, describes how Kṛṣṇa, he, came and killed Śālva and destroyed his airship Śaubha. So having been removed from the battlefield, Pradyumna was extremely ashamed, and he ordered his driver to take him immediately come back in the presence of Dyuman, who had actually struck Pradyumna. And as Pradyumna fought with Dyuman, other Yadu heroes, like Satyaki, Samba, they began to create havoc amongst Śālva's army. And the battle continued in this way for 27 days and nights, it is said. For 27 days and nights, the battle continued between Śālva and the residents of Dwarka. Then Lord Kṛṣṇa returned to Dwarka. He found it under siege. Why did Kṛṣṇa come to Dwarka? It is explained in text 6 and 7. It is said that invited by Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, Lord Kṛṣṇa had gone to Indraprastha. So now that the Rājasūya sacrifice had been completed and Śiśupāla was delivered, the Lord began to see inauspicious omens. So he took leave of the Kuru elders and the great sages, and also of Pritha and her sons, and returned to Dwarka. So Kṛṣṇa could understand that there's something happening in my city of Dwarka, so he immediately returned. So at once he ordered Daruka, Kṛṣṇa's chariot driver, to drive him into the battlefield. Kṛṣṇa came straight from Indraprastha. Kṛṣṇa came straight into the battlefield. And suddenly Śālva noticed the Lord, and he threw his spear at Kṛṣṇa's charioteer, Daruka. But the Lord shattered the weapon into 100 pieces and pierced Śālva and his Śaubha vehicle with numerous arrows. Śālva responded by shooting an arrow that struck Kṛṣṇa's left arm. Amazingly, the Lord dropped the Sharanga bow he was holding in his left hand, because Śālva, hit the left arm of Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa dropped the bow. The demigods watching the battle cried out in alarm that how could Kṛṣṇa's bow get dropped? And while Śālva took this opportunity to insult Kṛṣṇa. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that why did Kṛṣṇa apparently get hurt in his left arm? And why did his Sharanga bow drop from Kṛṣṇa's hand? Kṛṣṇa wanted to prove to the world that how dear his devotees are to him. You see, Śālva had come into battle because by the grace of Mahadev, Shiva Shambhu, who is Param Vaishnav. He's the greatest devotee of Kṛṣṇa. So Kṛṣṇa just wanted to honor that Lord Shiva, I honor you, I respect you, I love you. And you have given Śālva these kind of powers. So just to honor that, Kṛṣṇa apparently got this hurt. Then it is explained that Lord Kṛṣṇa then struck Śālva with his club, but the demon, while he was vomiting blood, he disappeared at that time. You know, Śālva had some magical potency also by the grace of Mayadanava. So he was vomiting blood, being struck by Kṛṣṇa's club, and he disappeared from there. And a moment later, just one moment later, a man came before Kṛṣṇa, and after offering obeisances to Kṛṣṇa, he introduced himself as a messenger from Mother Devaki. The man informed the Lord that his father Vasudev had been kidnapped by Śālva. Upon hearing this, Kṛṣṇa seemed to lament like an ordinary man. So text 26, Śālva said, immediately Kṛṣṇa, when he heard, this messenger speaking in this way, this messenger claimed to come from Mother Devaki, saying that, Śālva has kidnapped Vasudev. So this was all a trick, a magical, illusory trick done by Śālva himself. And Kṛṣṇa apparently again, fell into this magical illusion. Again, this is just to honor Lord Shiva. Kṛṣṇa is the Paramatma. No one can fool Kṛṣṇa. But Kṛṣṇa apparently came under the illusion just to satisfy and honor the position of Lord Shiva. And then it is said that after some time, Śālva himself appeared, and he was as if, holding the shoulder and the neck of Vasudev. He came to the battlefield as if holding Vasudev as a captive. He came in front of Kṛṣṇa, and text 26, Śālva said, "Here is your dear father who begot you, and for whose sake you are living in this world. I shall now kill him right in front of your eyes. Save him if you can, Kṛṣṇa." This was the way Śālva challenged Kṛṣṇa. So text 27 says, after he mocked the Lord in this way, the magician Śālva appeared to cut off Vasudev's head with his sword, and taking the head with him, he entered the Śaubha vehicle which was hovering in the sky. Text 28. By nature, Sri Kṛṣṇa is in full knowledge, and he possesses unlimited powers of perception, yet for a moment, out of great affection for his loved ones, Shukadev Goswami is saying this, that he remained absorbed in the mood of an ordinary human being. But he soon recalled that this was all a demoniac illusion engineered by Śālva. So Kṛṣṇa could immediately understand this, that all this is an illusion created by Śālva. So he pierced Śālva with a shower of arrows, and he struck the Śaubha vehicle with his club, demolishing it. And Srila Prabhupada writes in this regard that then Śālva thought that Kṛṣṇa had been bewildered by his mystic representations. He became encouraged and began to attack the Lord with greater strength and energy by showering volumes of arrows upon him. But the enthusiasm of Śālva can be compared to the speedy march of flies into a fire. Prabhupada says this. When they're so enthusiastic, when flies are flying towards the fire, they're running towards their own destruction. They're running towards their own death. That was the way of the enthusiasm of Śālva. So Sri Kṛṣṇa, by hurling his arrows with unfathomable strength, he injured Śālva. And he crushed his jeweled helmet into 1,000,000 pieces. And with a crushing blow from Kṛṣṇa's club, Śālva's wonderful airplane Śālva burst into 1,000,000 pieces and it fell into the sea of Dwarka. So Śālva descended from his airplane and he rushed towards Kṛṣṇa to attack him, but the Lord took up his Sudarshan and severed Śālva's head from his body. So with the killing of Śālva, the demigods in the sky played kettle drums in jubilation, and the demon Dantavakra then took a vow to avenge his friend Śālva's death. So here we see, this concludes this chapter, but the next chapter, tomorrow, we'll see how Kṛṣṇa kills and delivers Dantavakra. Prabhu will explain that very beautifully. But we see here that Śālva created so much illusion. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in this regard, he explains that those who are envious, and they can go up to any extent to create weakness amongst their opponent, upon the people who they envy upon. So they try to attack at the weakest point, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. So Śālva knew that Kṛṣṇa, respects his father, adores his father Vasudeva. So Śālva created the illusion of the messenger coming from Mother Devaki, and then Śālva himself coming with a false Vasudeva, illusory Vasudeva. And, cutting away Vasudeva's head in front of Kṛṣṇa and taking that head with him to this airplane. Such an illusion Śālva created. Just to, in his illusion, he thought that he can delude the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that is not the case with Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa and his dear devotees are always protected by the Lord. The Lord himself protects the devotees from such illusions, from such black magic, from such, negativities. Kṛṣṇa himself is always protected, and he reciprocated to a little extent to Śālva's magic and illusion just to honor Lord Shiva, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. But Kṛṣṇa immediately just killed Śālva with just, one disc, one, throw of his Sudarshan chakra. Śālva was killed. So similarly, the devotees also of the Lord are protected by the Lord in this similar way. Although the people who are envious, they can pose so many things which apparently look that can weaken, sincere devotees. But the Lord is the protector. The Lord comes and personally protects such sincere devotees, sincere sadhakas. So we must remember this, that this pastime gives us this kind of understanding that, we are, we should always seek shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Kṛṣṇa, and never be, deterred from this path. Always seek proper shelter of Guru and Kṛṣṇa, and then we will always remain protected by the grace of Kṛṣṇa. So with this, we end today's session. We will take any questions, comments, or reflections. If you have any, please do share in our comment section. Thank you all so much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So here's the quiz questions for today. We have 8 questions. The first one, why was Śiśupāla one of the most rivaled enemy of Kṛṣṇa? Second, why did Śiśupāla not object the appointment of Kṛṣṇa to receive Arga Puja earlier? Third, as per the Acharyas, what is the hidden glorification of Kṛṣṇa when Śiśupāla says that he has no qualities and is excluded from all religious duties? Fourth, how many offenses did Kṛṣṇa promise to forgive for Śiśupāla? Fifth, what is the benefit of listening to the pastime of Kṛṣṇa killing Śiśupāla? Sixth, who did Śālva worship to get the benediction? Seventh, what is the flying city of Śālva named? Eighth, why did Kṛṣṇa appear to drop his Shranga bow when struck by Śālva on his left arm? So these are the questions. If there's any, these are the quiz questions. So if there's any questions, please let us know. We again would like to thank Shama Supriya, Swati Mataji, Janeshwar Gauranga Prabhu, Barshana Chitra Mataji, Madhubhashini Mataji, Rajeshwari Mataji, Meena Mataji, Keshavi, Rekha Mataji, Soumya, Ma Baba, We also have Papa who joined us today. So thank you, Papa, for joining us. Shweta Surya Narayanan Mataji, Sudesh Prabhu, thank you so much for joining. Lalita Mataji, thank you all so much for joining our session today. And from Facebook, we'd like to thank Ranjani Gopika Mataji. We'd like to thank Soumya Lalita Mataji. Divyangi Lalita Mataji, Prem Vikas Prabhu, Shama Supriya, all of you for joining us on Facebook. And also Charu Prabhu for joining the online session. Thank you so much. All right, so if there's no more questions, we can end today's session here. We look forward to all of your association again tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Vartaman Guru Vrinda ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Sitanath Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.